Andreas, you got one job, man.
Oh, we're live. Sorry, I was reading something. I didn't realize we were at the hour. Welcome to the Dresden Files podcast, where we talk about all things Dresden Files. Today, we're talking about Summer Night, Writers' Room, the final, actual final for real. No bullshit. Actual final. We'll get there. I promise. We'll talk about how you can support us if you like what we do at the end of the show.
22 pages. We could do it. But I'm sorry to say, I already know we're going to have one digression beyond this one already because holy shit, I noticed a detail. I've read these books like at least 4 or 5 times and I'm like, oh, that's a spoiler, or at least it better be. So anyway, when we left off last time, Dresden was climbing the stairway to heaven. And that's where we were going to, we're going to blow our unlimited budget. We're going to get Back in Black for his montage. We're going to get Stairway to Heaven when he climbs a literal stairway made of starlight up to the battlefield, right? And
I just had a dumb idea. It would be funny. It would also be cheaper in a small way if instead you had Dresden like trying to sing the songs to himself badly. Yeah. And other people, especially as he's going up the stairs and he's panting and he's out of breath and he's trying to do music, and people say like, it'd be easier if you just breathe instead of trying to do dumb, bad music.
Right. So. He has a moment here because of where it opens, but I think it'd be hilarious to get the actor to sing Back in Black, but humming, Starlight to Heaven. And, like it's a bummer because the only people that aren't wolves with him right now are Meryl and Fix. So I guess it could be like Fix or even Meryl, I guess would make sense.
Meryl, just Fix, be like, Fix wouldn't have the gumption yet.
Stairway to Heaven, really? How old are you? Something along those lines. But so his opening inner monologue is him, marveling about the miracle of flight and how people will complain about the drinks. And then that was him on a stairway made of literal starlight complaining about it. And then just being like, yeah, sure. They couldn't have possibly made this an escalator, so it's like, oh, I'm sorry. I congealed photons into tangible force for you to climb up into a battle that is almost certainly going to kill you. Next time we'll think about if it's convenient enough for you, Yeah. So.
I mean, the fact that there is a way that he can get there is convenience enough, considering most of the people who need to be there are already summoned by magic teleportation.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it could have been like a dumbwaiter, it could have been an elevator of some sort, or something, but it's Mab because fuck you. So,
just too new technology for her. She wouldn't know it. Why would you need to do that?
Well, yeah, I mean, they almost certainly had cranes, right? If she was a contemporary of Arthur, I doubt they built that entirely out of manual labor. So, they had pulleys and,
you're right. It could have been a trebuchet up to the stone table.
Yeah, it's really hard not to read this with like a more creative bend and just be like, okay, I mean, obviously the written word is perfect and pure and everything, but what if it was funny? Funnier, because there are funny moments.
Yeah, we're definitely funnier than Jim. 100%.
I wouldn't say like 100%. I might be like 25% more funny sometimes, but other times like it just really is perfect. So talking about description, right? And it's like we kind of want to try to move this along, but like, there are 3+ paragraphs of like, so this is what the battlefield looks like, type of thing.
Yeah.
And especially in contrast of he's already been there. He's already seen what it was going to look like on a quiet day. Now we get to see it on, like World War I, World War II scale. Because that's the thing. It's like I had to break myself out of reading some of these descriptions. Is like, this is trench warfare. It isn't, but it reads like it, where it's just like you've got, your wounded soldiers pulled down by the medics trying to heal them and stuff like that. So, So just for some of the description anyway, what had once been rolling and silent terrain sculpted of clouds, smooth and naked as a dressing dummy, had now been filled with sound, color, and violence. The storm below that battlefield was a pale reflection of the one raging upon it. We emerged on one of the hills looking down into the valley of the stone table, and the hillside around us, lit with flashes of lightning, and the clouds beneath was covered in fairies of all sizes and descriptions. That's the other thing. It's like, it's easy to forget from his description of hills and mountains and whatever that they're on storm clouds. And so there's mists and whatever, and he refers to it as a river, but this isn't like a river through a valley. This is like a river of just water running on top of less solid water, kind of. It's just very interesting. All right. That was fun. Speaking of interesting.
Had to fix the camera. It stopped working.
Yeah, so lots of thunder, lots of lightning, not all of that just from the clouds, but mostly trumpets, high and sweet, deep and brassy. Drums beat to a dozen different cadences that both clashed and rumbled in time with one another. Shouts and cries rang out in time with those drum shrieks that might have come from human throats, together with the bellows and roars that couldn't have. Taken as a whole, it was his own wild storm of music, huge teeth rattling, overwhelming, and charged with adrenaline. Wagner wishes he could have had it so good. And that's just one of the 3 or 4 paragraphs, because that's the matte painting in the background, right? Mm-hmm. And then not 20 feet away from us stood a crowd of short, brown-skinned, white-haired little guys, their hands and feet twice as large as they should have been, bulbous noses the size of light bulbs behind helmets that looked made out of what looked like some kind of bone. So yeah, so there's just this whole 80s rock band entrance of them emerging up through the mist with the Duster and billowing and Meryl and Fix and a dozen wolves basically. And then there's a troll there. We get a super great description of a troll, and then a couple of she knights completely encased in fairy armor and mounted on long-legged war horses of deep blue, violet, and black. We've got sylphs running around, all boobily and covered in blood. We'll get more pixie stuff later too. But basically, while he's still trying to digest this, Meryl and Fix ask him what's next. And one of the knights kind of sees them and walks over, and he does the whole like pause, mute on the battlefield thing. He just raises his hand and it goes silent, which will be super fun, for the audience and everything like that. Cause it's just like, just have it so loud and so jarring. You've got medieval battle going on in the background and then just nothing. So, but yeah, he lifts his helmet and talks to him and, immediately recognizes him as well. So greets him, emissary, I greet thee and thy companions. Greetings, warrior. I needs must speak with Queen Mab post haste. Probably smirking at himself the entire time,
Yeah, so it's got to get into the correct format of speech here. Right.
I will guide thee, follow, and bid thy companions put away their weapons ere we approach her majesty. I nodded and said to those with me, put the teeth and cutlery away, folks. We need to play nice a little while longer. So they follow the knight to Mab. She's up on, this hilltop, basically. His eyelashes freezing over, everything like that. She's sitting on a white horse, and her hair basically just flowing to the point where it just disappears into the mane of the horse, which is still kind of interesting to me that it's described so much. But everybody everybody with Dresden basically, freaks or, is otherwise compelled in some way because Fix is like, oh my God. And then when Dresden looks back, the werewolves were simply staring at Mab, much as Fix was. Meryl regarded her from behind a forced mask of neutrality, but her eyes were alight with something wild and eager. Steady, folks, I said, and stepped forward. Go ahead.
As an inference, she's definitely doing something with an aura of.
It might just be her.
It could just be her, but like she doesn't always do that to people. She's doing it now because she's in a battle. It's much like what she was doing in Battleground Peace Talks of sending out some kind of aura to make people do more aggressive things and be afraid as her enemies.
That was one thing, like as a reader, I was paying attention to is like, are there signs of the banner here? And Dresden just didn't recognize it, which is almost entirely true, right? But I think the reverse would kind of be more the thing too. Like, is it that Mab is projecting something, or is it that Mab is busy and not suppressing it? Because she's not where they're supposed to be mortals. She's with the Fae and she's busy, so she's just going to let her aura hang out, type of thing.
I think it's a little bit of both. So,
sure.
Because she's probably not suppressing it in a way that's affecting the wolves, but she's also probably actively doing it to call Marilyn Fix to her side.
Right. That makes sense.
Or I don't remember what Fix's parentage was, but Meryl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the wild Fae, any of the neutral Fae, they are calling, and so she is calling them to now. And the people who would have had the banners were the ones who'd be the knights. Summer Night is obviously indisposed. Winter Night is also indisposed and a shithead and wouldn't be able to do the banner probably. So
right. That's fair.
So therefore there are no banners, even if he already had built that structure into them here.
Presumably like Talos and the other, Fae Lords on Summer's side of doing it, and maybe Leah and Maeve and a few others on Mab's side, because
when the nature of the banners then.
Well, but yeah, Dresden wasn't the only one with a banner. Presumably Marcone had a banner, right? In Battleground.
But did he have a different banner because he was Baron of Chicago and not one because of Winter?
How though? Like, I mean, unless
signatory of the Accord, like
Namshiel is doing it. Yeah, but I don't think you just bestowed a banner. Like,
no, because he's powerful enough to do it. He has the force of will to mentally hold that thing, and it's a group of people. And it kind of implied to me, at least, that it works on humans more than it works on fairies. But fairies will obviously be able to understand it. But the encapsulating nature of the banner was working on the people of Chicago. But it's like it didn't.
I mean, maybe he negotiated with it, for it with Mab or something,
anything like that, or maybe with Vatterung or something. Like he has the understanding of what it could be,
right?
Got the power, but it doesn't seem to me that Leah or Talos or any of the other fairies would be able to have a banner when the banners seem to work on people.
Yeah, that might just be a small sample pool for what we're aware of. But like one thing I'll say is that Marcone very much seems like the kind of guy that if he was aware of the coming conflict, he's aware that he needs to prepare for it. He would ask the question, right? Which is one of the things that we're upset with Dresden on repeatedly. He would ask either to Mab or like even in a backhanded way where Marcone would be brainstorming with them and just be like, well, man, if only there was some way for me to coordinate thousands of,
he would ask
of
guard.
combatants, sure. Yeah. And she could say something, but yeah, I mean, if it's a thing, I don't see any reason why the named fairy lords and whatever wouldn't be able to do it. So, but moving on.
Digression number 1.
So yeah, that wasn't me, but so my emissary, you have found the thief. Yes, Queen Mab, the Summer Lady Aurora. Mab's eyes widened enough that I got the impression that she understood the whole of the matter from that one fact. Indeed, and can you bring us proof of this? Quick little aside, Mab's not an idiot. She had everything figured out. She probably had it narrowed down to like 2 or 3 people. And she was just like, well, if it was this person, this is the play. And if it was this person, this was the play. So that's why she just needed that last puzzle piece, would be my headcanon anyway.
I mean, her play here, Mab's play, is she has Dresden and she knows how important he is. She's getting him involved in something that is important to the fate of the whole universe, knowing that he is either going to be the destroyer or the protector of it. And she also knows that Nemesis is involved in maybe maybe Rashid does, and Titania might, but no one else would really know at this point of Nemesis, other than a few people, like very few people.
Right. Yeah. So this is my digression. So if I move swiftly, I said I must reach the stone table before midnight. Mab's empty eyes flickered towards the stars above, and I thought I saw a hint of worry in them. They move swiftly this night, wizard. She paused and then breathed out almost to herself. Time himself runs against thee. Not itself, himself. Right. I was like, wait. I wrote it down, like I said it, and then I wrote it down in my notes. Fucking what? Because why is she personifying time unless he is, so father time or,
yeah,
whatever.
It's not unheard of. It could also be a holdover in speech of, when things were gendered in English and then English lost it.
Maybe.
It's a maybe, but
guess who's going to show up in the time travel book is now my theory, right? It's not just Dresden mucking around with time. He's going to get Ghost of Christmas Pasted. So
he kind of already was that in a weird way, but
right. But in my theory, he was doing it to himself almost, right? But now I feel like he's gonna, at least be sent on the trip, by yeah. So you're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
So anyway, what can be done to get me there? So but yeah, so Titania is doing something, so Mab has to counter it. There's, very pretty and whatever, but then Mab starts noticing all the toys that Rashid gave Dresden. Certainly he isn't, it isn't like he's representing the council and they're interfering. I know that. And your ointment, it's his recipe. I recognize the smell. He helped me find this place, yes. So what does the old desert fox have in mind this time? No matter. The stone cannot lead you to the table. The direct route would place you in the path of battle enough to destroy any mortal. You must go another way. Any mortal, like even the senior council, kind of a big deal. So, because we've seen Ebenezer throw down now. So, but basically she guides him. And of course, all of Winter's going to stay out of your way as long as you don't pick a fight. Because, dude, they want to fight right now. So,
yeah.
So they go back and forth, and then Summer gains ground despite all. Our knight has not taken the field with us. He has been seduced, I presume. Yes, he's with Aurora. That's the last time I let Maeve hire the help. I indulge her too much. Just a lot of really good one-liners that resonate for a long time.
That is wonderful.
Yeah. We yet hold the river, wizard, though we lose ground on both sides now. Thy godmother and daughter have concentrated upon it, but reach the river, and it will take thee through the battle to the hill of the stone table. Get to the river, I said. Right, I can do that. Yeah, so this is where she says, those who are mine will know thee, wizard, And then he yells back to everybody else, try to stay in the blue mist and don't start a fight with anything. So this one was kind of funny. I started downhill, which as far as I know is the easiest way to find water. So, yeah.
Yeah, he didn't ask for a map.
Yeah, it doesn't need it. It's a river bisecting the battlefield. Even Dresden can find that. So
yeah, but if he can't see it from wherever he is on the hill with Mab, he could have can I have a small map to that has a helpful point of you are here right now.
Point, but yeah, he manages. So there's, more, a bunch of description. This is a lengthy paragraph, but I think I'm going to read it because this is where I started to get World War I vibes, right? So we passed through hundreds more troops, most of them units evidently recovering from the first shock of battle. Scarlet and blue-skinned ogres in fairy mail towered over me, their blood almost dull compared to their skin and armor. Another unit of brown-skinned gnomes tended to their wounded with bandages of some kind of moss. A group of sylphs crouched over a mound of bloody, stinking carrion, squabbling like vultures, blood all over their faces, breasts, and dragonfly wings. Another troop of battle lantern-jawed, burly humanoids with wide bat-like ears, goblins, dragged their dead and some of their wounded over to the sylphs, tossing them onto the carrion pile with businesslike efficiency despite their fellows' feeble screeches and yowls. So horrifying. Also, a side note, if it wasn't clear to everybody by this point, if we have a budget, it's all going into this episode and these like 10 minutes, because holy crap, like there's so many different kinds of fae and so many different, effects and stuff. We can save a bunch of money by feeding actual goblins to actual sylphs, but it depends on what the unions are going to say about that. So so
what, the sylph union?
Yeah, right.
Don't think goblins have a union?
Goblins are not normal sylph food, so the sylph union's going to be really
fuck
mad
with the
about
goblin
that.
union. That shit's headed by the elite Earl King. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like, I don't.
right.
I don't. Oh.
Yeah, so Dresden's trying to hurry them along and is empathetic about the wolves because their senses are enhanced, so they can hear, see, and smell everything even better than Dresden can. And then he's trying to flank Fix with Meryl so that Fix doesn't have to see so much, and Meryl gives him a nod of thanks and everything. So yeah, he hears water splashing. They're near the river. Okay, folks, he shouted in my copy, but shouted, I'm assuming. We run forward and get to the river. Don't stop to slug it out with anyone. Don't stop until you're standing in the water, or until some fairy soldier rips your legs off, he thought. And then he ran forward into the proverbial fray. So, chapter 31, basically there's a really cool scene of bench-sized bumblebees attacking a goblin formation. And goblins with their shields, and they're trying to defend against both the bumblebees and archers. There's a bunch of goblins with arrows sticking out of their eyes and throats and shit like that. So pretty good little description for a paragraph. And then the jumbo bees peel off to go attack Dresden and everybody else. So Dresden has everybody getting behind him, and he gathers a bunch of power, hardens it into a shield, sending it through the staff, focusing on building a wall of naked force to repel the oncoming bees. He held the strike until they were close enough to see the facets of their eyes, swept my staff from left to right, and cried, right to left, and cried, Fozari. A curtain of blazing scarlet energy whirled into place in front of me, and it slammed into the oncoming bees like a giant windshield. They went bouncing off of it with heavy thuds of impact. Several of the bees crash landed and lay on the ground. A couple other ones kind of survived, so he finishes them off with fuego. So again, very action, lots of magic and stuff. Because that's the other thing. Like, there's a better scene here in a minute, but he's drawing a lot of energy from the storm. So there's a lot of, whether he's consciously doing it or not, I'm not 100% sure. I think sort of he is, but there's a lot of times where he's like slamming, his staff into the ground, into the clouds, or he's pulling energy up or something along those lines. So, yeah. Fix and Meryl watch him like take care of the bees, and Fix is like, wow. And then Dresden, I all but tore my hair out in frustration. Go! I shouted and started running for the water, pushing and tugging them to get them moving. Go, go, go! So we were 10 feet from the shore when I heard hoofbeats sweeping toward the river from the far side. I looked up to see horses sailing through the mist, not flying horses, but long-legged fairy steeds, coats and manes shining golden and green, that had simply leapt from the far side of the river, bearing their riders with them. Slate's in the lead. He's got his sword. Lloyd Slate was splattered in liquids of various colors that could only be blood. He bore a sword in one hand, the reins of his mount in the other, and he was laughing. Even as he landed, the nearby goblins mounted a charge. Slate turned toward them, sword whirling and gathering with a howl of freezing winds, its blade rhyming with ice. He met the first goblin's sword with his own, and the squat fairy soldier's blade shattered. Slate shifted his shoulders and sent his horse leaping a few feet to one side. Behind him, the goblin's head toppled from its shoulders, which spouted greenish blood for a few seconds before the body fell beside the head on the misty ground. The remaining goblins retreated, and Slate whirled his steed around to face me. Wizard, still alive, so because he's having the time of his life right now. That's when, Korik and Talos and Aurora and everybody also jump over following him. So that's the other thing, Slade being the tip of their spear, kind of interesting because, they're no slouches. He might just be having more fun. So
he might be having more fun. Also, they care less if he dies.
Sure. And the Summer Corps are definitely concerned with Aurora's well-being. We get a couple of little lines from Talos, talking about that and everything because, Aurora and Dresden share a little bit of banter. And then the Summer Lady's eyes glittered green and too bright. She looked up at the stars and then back to me with that same too intense pressure to her gaze. And I began to understand. Bad enough that she was one of the She, already alien to mortal kind. Bad enough that she was a fairy queen, driven by goals I didn't fully understand, following rules I could only just begin to grasp. She was also mad, loopy as a crochet convention. So,
Did he use that phrase on Justine, or am I crazy?
He might have, and I'm getting that impression that. For Grave Peril?
Yeah, when I remember that phrase being when Justine was after being held by vampires for a little bit before they burned down the place, that he used that phrase against Justine, and so hearing it now for Aurora kind of shocks me. It's a fun phrase.
I mean, he does follow the rules, right? So there are hints and what's the word I'm looking for? Like tags is what's in my head, but like there are traits that you assign to certain things and certain people so that they become recognizable, and tags. those become the rules, right? So that's why you have a particular image in mind for Murphy, even though she's she doesn't have like a specific description to the point where you can pull her out of a lineup. She's got it vague enough, but those particular tags are what shows up so that it's Murphy we're talking about, like her cute button nose and, whatever. So, So anyway, let's see. Mab knows Aurora. Titania will soon know there's no point to this anymore. They won't let you do it. She laughed, the sound piercingly sweet. It set my nerves to jangling, and I had to push it back from my thoughts with an effort of will. The werewolves and changelings didn't do so well. The wolves flinched back with high-pitched whimpers and frightened growls, and Fix and Meryl actually fell to their knees, clutching at their ears. So, forgot about that little detail, but that's kind of important. They cannot stop me, wizard, and neither can you. Korik with me, the rest of you kill Harry Dresden. Kill them all. Yeah, so there is a score of She warriors with them, focused on me and drew swords or lifted long spears in their hands. Talos in his spell repelling mail that had enabled him to impersonate an ogre, shook colors from his blade and focused on me with deadly feline intensity. I think I skipped over it, but there's a line in here that I think Talos or Korik, one of them or both, really looks like they've murdered a rainbow, so that'll be, fun. Just get them predator blood and neon blues and greens and, just whatever. So, around me, I heard the werewolves crouch down, growls bubbling up in their throats. Meryl gathered herself to her feet, blood running from her ears.
Doing the wolves?
took her axe in one big hand. Obviously, practical effects. Like, we're going to hire real wolves. So,
Because they gotta kind of be like bigger, right? They're like bigger than normal wolves, but we don't want them to look like Twilight wolves. The CG wolves.
Well, they're going to have to at some point, right? I mean, I guess we could literally make them puppets. Yeah, I don't know what the Twilight wolves look like. Yeah, that's not. I mean, those just look like regular wolves, right?
Yeah, they're just they're like a lot bigger.
Oh shit! Yeah, seeing her next to one of them, they are gigantic. But in some of these other pictures, it's like they're just gray wolves that apparently are bigger, right? So, in my mind, they're always black or very dark colors.
I think what's her name? The Butters Squeeze. She's like red.
Yeah, right. There are some with like auburn fur, but but when he describes the wolves crouch down, I see black wolves or whatever, not individual. Like, oh yeah, well there's like 2 black ones and a brown one and an auburn one, and my imagination's not that detailed, I guess, but so
yeah, I'm just more wondering, like in the TV wise, how we would do it best. Have practical wolves, like wolfhounds that are trained, or
sure
more CG. I mean, to be fair, Twilight was a while ago when you could make them more realistic if the time and effort is put into it.
Like, with unlimited budget, anything is possible. So yeah.
I mean, Marvel CGI looked really good for a long time, and then they had to make too much, and now it kind of looks mediocre, right?
Yeah, I don't know about all that. I mean, the thing that blew my mind with the Marvel stuff, right, is how like, for me, it's Iron Man, how Iron Man's costume evolved over time.
Worse.
But, well, you can say that. What I'm trying to get to is the technicalities of it, right?
Yeah.
Where, in Iron Man 1 and, so, like, at least in Iron Man 1, he had to wear like a chest rig, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everything for them to CGI frame over it. But by the time you get to like Iron Man 2 and Avengers and whatever, it's almost entirely CGI. Like, there are a couple of points where they like mesh the costume over him, but like the reason why he can like lift his helmet and shit like that in the scenes, that's not practical ever. Like those are CGI effects.
Yeah.
So,
even in Iron Man 1, the thing, the first time he puts it on, the mask coming down is 100% CGI. They do it well. The shadow and everything fits perfectly.
Right.
That's kind of my gripe with that, is that it used to look so good, like but now, because they have to make so much, it does not look as good.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not going to fight you on it, other than to say I barely ever notice. You want to talk to me about Yoda, 20 years ago, then we got something to talk about. But yeah, like it's not bad enough to pull me out of it, anyway. So,
no.
But yeah, and that's kind of the risk, right? The Twilight ones you can very much tell are CGI, and so like it'd be great if we could do something like Lord of the Rings did, right? Where it's like you can play with scale more than the CGI effect, or something along those lines. But
motion capture of animated figures, assets. You have like 8 wolves. Each one of them gets their own asset, essentially, of like the way that they have to do it for video games and something. Do it as a CGI, but you have to just like, you don't need to make 300 of them. That kind of makes it even harder to have that actually more detailed, because it's so much fewer of them. But you can do enough that's highly detailed. And yes, they're going to be CGI. Everyone knows that they're CGI when they're looking at it. That's okay, unless we do everything as claymation, I guess. Like,
we're going to have to do a claymation episode, obviously. But so, are you saying we do 12 wolves one time, or do we do one wolf 12 times?
12 wolves one time.
Yeah. Sorry, Boondock Saints reference, but yeah. Okay. Are we good with the wolves? Are we happy? I mean, if it's me with my unlimited money, I would just have them do all of them, right? I would be like, okay, now what does it look like to do practical? What does it look like to do, show me your CGI, show me, whatever. So, but unlimited time and money, we're going to make the perfect one. So in 20 years, they're not trying to remake it because they can't. So
I'll do it anyway, even if it is perfect.
I know.
But
yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things that this is going to cost a lot to have the wolves. But if you're making a very long series and you're reusing those assets, then it's an investment and you can just refine things instead of it's just a cost and then throw it away.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it depends on the level of reuse because, your fans will notice, right? I'm like, they use that same transformation in episode 4. Bunch of jokes about that, right? So, let alone certain high profile directors who have reused car crashes and stuff like that in, some Transformers movie and some, not Transformers movie, just saying. So, but it's a TV show, right? So theoretically you could be forgiven for some of that, but anymore people are just like, man, my TV show doesn't have big movie budget. What's even the point?
Right.
You got Rings of Power ruining it for everybody with like, what do you mean you're not spending $250 million an episode? Like, or whatever it is. So
we're not ready to have that match. Okay.
I just finished it. So it's fresh.
Is it done?
The season 2 is. Yeah.
I need to watch it then. I was just waiting for all the episodes. So.
Yeah, everybody with a keyboard is busy fighting about whether or not they're going to continue because there's supposed to be 5 seasons planned and whatnot. So they're like, oh, they're totally doing season 3.
Okay, I'm going to be a director right now, and we cannot afford this digression for the amount of book that we have left, and we're going to save this for later.
Yeah.
And it's totally not because it upsets you.
Shush. I will mute you.
She is, but she's not wrong either. So Meryl's got herself an axe and a machete, which is fun because fight like a girl. Oh, sorry, that's a Joss Whedon reference. Never mind. And then Fix has got a big old 2-handed, like monkey wrench, which apparently we're still allowed to say that. I don't know. So in any case, he's got one of those like gigantic, oversized. We don't have time for this, director. So. Dresden's got his staff and blasting rod, plants his feet, and Slate levels his sword at him, lets out a cry, and basically so let's see. Oh yeah, let me back up because this is one where Dresden's like using the magic again, like the cloud, I think. So I gripped my staff and blasting rod and planted my feet. I called my power to me, lifted my staff and smote it against the ground. Power crackled along its length and rumbled like thunder through the ground, frightening the fairy mounts into restlessness. Slate leveled his sword at me and let out a cry, taking the panicked animal from a frightened rear to a full frontal charge, which, big deal. So around him, the warriors of the summer court followed, the light of the stars and moon glittering on their swords and armor, horses screaming, surging toward us like a deadly bejeweled tide. I want this to be slow motion, like I just want Dresden to be able to see like all of the, details. I want Slate to yell death, but he's not cool enough.
Those really high-powered cameras that can take everything at really high level speeds and then slow it down, like they did with Spartacus or something like that a long time ago.
Yeah, probably like 300, but yeah. The werewolves let out a full-throated howl, eerie and savage. Meryl screamed, wild and loud, and even Fix let out a tiny battle shriek. The noise was deafening and no one could have heard me anyway, so I let out my own battle cry, which I figured was worth a shot. What the hell? I don't believe in fairies! So, you're welcome. I said the line.
It is really important to get that in there.
Like, obviously, that's the title of the episode even, I feel like, so, like, it's that important. But yeah, so then... tactics. Dresden breaks down in his mind about how cavalry charges are all about momentum, and he's got to figure out some way to steal the momentum from them because wolves are not. They're on foot, and there are 20 knights that are mounted. That's really bad for you. That's the whole reason why we have knights, as opposed to just everybody being on foot because it's better. So he drops his blasting rod to grip his staff in both hands and extended it before him. The moment I did, the she-riders began making swift warding gestures, accompanied by staccato bursts of magical pressure, separate protective charms rising up before each of them to block whatever magic I may throw, whatever magic I was about to throw. Excuse me. The horses, however, didn't do any such thing. I raised a shield, but not in a wall in front of me. Such a warding gesture such a warding would have brought the fairy nobles into contact with it, and no wizard could hold a spell against the wills of a score of fairy lords. I brought up a shield only a couple of feet high and stretched it in a ribbon across the ground at the feet of Slate's mount. The Winter Knight's steed, a giant gray-green beast, never knew what hit it. The low wall I'd called up clipped it at the knees, and it came crashing down to the misty earth with a scream, dragging Slate down with it. Talos, on Slate's right, could not react in time to stop his mount or to avoid the wall, but he threw himself clear as his horse went down, dropped into a roll as nimble and precise as any martial arts movie aficionado could desire, and came up on his feet. He spun a dance-like step somehow in time with the vast song of the battlefield, and his sword came whipping at my head. And this dude's an elf, like Lord of the Rings elf. Like I want to see Legolas on the battlefield, you know, one way or another. But yeah, like such a great little scene of him, just like you could just see him kind of like vault, you know, off the horse and tumble and just immediately start attacking Dresden.
Like using a shield as a skateboard, which Legolas did.
Yeah. No, but you know, sure. So let's see. So in the background, there's a bunch of, you know, horses that are screaming and tripping, and he basically, you know, destroyed their charge, but he's a little busy dodging Talos right now. Meryl stepped between us and caught Talos' sword on the X formed by her axe and machete. She strained against the Summers Lord Marshal, leaning her whole body into the effort, muscles quivering. I'd felt exactly how strong the changeling girl was, but Talos simply pressed against that strength, his face composed, slowly overcoming her. Why do you do this, changeling child? You who have struggled against winter so long, it is useless. Stand aside. I wish no harm to thee. Like you wish no harm to Lily? How can you do that to her? It does not please me, child, but it is not for me to decide. She is my queen. We're just following orders.
Mm-hmm.
Just doing what I'm told.
Yeah. She's not mine.
Just because it does not please him does not mean that it pains him either.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. So Meryl snarled and drove her forehead forward into Talos's nose. She struck him hard enough that I heard the impact, and it drove the fairy lord back several staggering paces. She didn't see Slate come up from the ground a few feet away and make a quick squatting lunge at her flank. Meryl, look out! She didn't hear me. The Winter Knight's sword bit into her just below her lowest rib, and she took more than a foot of frost-covered steel thrusting up and back. Slate's sword tore through her and came out through her jacket and the flatware coating it, emerging like some bloody blade of grass. She faltered, her mouth opening in a gasp. Both axe and machete fell from her hands. Fix starts screaming. Slate laughed and said something I couldn't hear. Then he twisted the blade with a wrenching pop and whipped it back out. Meryl stared at him and reached out a hand. Slate slapped it contemptuously aside and turned his back on her. She fell limply down. Dresden gets super mad. Slate, you murdering bastard. So the Winter Knight's head whipped around toward me. His sword came up to guard. Talos's eyes widened and his fingers made a series of swift warning gestures because you've pissed off a wizard and we know what's about to happen. So I gathered my rage together and reached down into the ground beneath me, found the fury of the storm within it that matched my own. I thrust the end of my staff down into the misty cloud ground as if I'd been driving a hole through a frozen lake. Then extended my right hand toward the Winter Knight. Ventus fulmino. So this is one that it's like I want to, you know, kind of like break, I don't know, the fourth wall or something a little bit, where it's like you actually see him draw the lightning up through the cloud and then just like blast Slate with it, because, you know, that was just such a cool visual in my head.
Mm-hmm.
That would be cool.
Yeah. But just one of those, it's like, I mean, if the audience could take it, it's like you could even imagine, like, you're looking at Dresden on top of the cloud, you dive through the hole upside down to watch the lightning skipping around the clouds and then pulled back up and just get launched at him.
Is it the same spell he uses in Stormfront where he channels the storm?
I don't know.
If not, maybe it should be. Maybe they should we just retcon so that it's the same spell. So that's a callback to Stormfront as well, since he's using the lightning and he's doing the same thing there.
Yeah, that was like 6 months ago, just for Summer Night. So I don't remember. Yeah. But
so what he's doing now, he's actually throwing a lightning bolt. But what he was doing in Stormfront was just charging a spell with lightning. So I don't think it was the same spell.
Well, he's kind of doing it here too, right? So. Yeah, so the fury of the storm beneath us reared up through the wood of my staff, electricity rising in a buzzing roar of light and energy coming up from the ground and spiraling around the staff and across my body. It whirled down my extended right arm, a serpent of blue-white lightning, hesitated for a second, and then lashed across the space between me and the tip of Lloyd Slate's sword, fastening onto the blade and bathing Slate in a writhing coruscation of azure sparks. So he's definitely pulling the lightning. He's just maybe more in control.
He's wielding the lightning versus what he was doing in Stormfront.
Did he use himself as a battery first?
Yeah.
Did he absorb
it? He pulled the energy from the lightning, and then he was like Fozari or something. Like he was like just transforming that into a spell to charge it. Not the same thing as wielding it, which he's doing here.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Slate's body jerked, his back arching violently. Thunder tore the air apart as the bolt of lightning struck home, throwing Slate into the air and hurling him violently to the ground. The shockwave of the thunder knocked me down, together with everyone else in the immediate area. Everyone except for Talos, which I think is another great visual, because it's like everybody gets blasted back, maybe slow motion again. We don't need to overuse it. But then Talos is just standing there like, shield, obviously, Well,
he's that one guy at when the volcano exploded in Codex Alera, or when it was about to explode. Like everybody drops except for that one guy. Too bad he's on the wrong side.
Right. Yeah. The Lord Marshal of Summer braced himself against the concussion, lifting one hand before his eyes as if it had been a stiff breeze. Then, in the deafening silence that came after, he lifted his sword and came straight toward me. Oh, yeah. I was going to skip this part, but it's too good. So I reached for my blasting rod. Let's see. Yeah, I reached for my blasting rod on the ground not far away, lifted it, and threw a quick lash of fire at Talos. The She-Lord didn't even bother to gesture it aside. It splashed against him and away, and with a sweep of his long sword, he sent my blasting rod spinning from my grasp. I lifted my staff as a feeble shield with my left hand, and he struck that away as well. Some of my hearing returned, enough for me to hear him say, "And so it ends." "You're damned right," I muttered. "Look down." He did. I'd drawn my 357 in my right hand while he'd knocked the staff out of my left. I braced my right elbow against the ground and pulled the trigger. Like that. So good timing, Andreas. So
hell yeah.
A second roar of thunder, sharper than the first, blossomed out from the end of the gun. I don't think the bullet penetrated the dark fairy male because it didn't tear through Talos like it should have. It hit him like a sledgehammer instead, driving him back and toppling him to the ground. He lay there for a moment, stunned. It was cheap, but I was in a freaking war, and I was more than a little angry. I kicked him in the face with the heel of my boot, and then I leaned down and clubbed him with the heavy barrel of the 357 until his stunned attempts to defend himself ceased, and he lay still. The skin of his face burned and blistered where the steel of the gun's barrel struck him. I looked up in time to see Lloyd Slate, his right arm dangling uselessly, swing the broken haft of a spear at my head. There was a flash of light and pain, and I fell back on the ground, too stunned to know how badly I'd been hit. I tried to bring the gun to bear again, but Slate took it from my hand, spun it around a finger, and lowered the barrel to my head, already thumbing the hammer back. I saw the gun coming down and saw as well that Slate wasn't going to pause for dramatic dialogue. The second I saw the dark circle of the barrel, I threw myself to one side, lifting my arms. The gun roared, and I waited for a light at the end of what I was pretty sure would be a downward sloping tunnel. Slate missed. A ferocious, high-pitched shriek of fury made him whip his head to one side as a new attacker entered the fray. Fix brought his monkey wrench down in a two-handed swing that ended at Lloyd Slate's wrist. There was a crunch of impact of the delicate bones there snapping, and my gun went flying into the water. Slate let out a snarl and swung his broken arm at Fix, but the little guy was quick. He met the blow with the monkey wrench held in both hands, and it was Slate who screamed and reeled from the blow. "You hurt her!" Fix screamed. His next swing hit Slate in the side of his left kneecap and dropped the Winter Knight to the ground. "You hurt Meryl!"
Do you think we could have Foo Fighters Monkey Wrench playing here, or is that not appropriate for the emotions of the scene?
I think we should have Hans Zimmer be the composer and let him do whatever he wants.
I mean, obviously, yeah.
We can't afford that. Even
we can.
Even with our unlimited budget, there are limits. Hans Zimmer, I don't think that's...
I think you have failed to grasp the word unlimited. Maybe it's a translation error, but it is unlimited. So until we've exceeded the GDP of like the United States, I'm not worried about it.
Yeah,
so.
Like the money may not be the issue. His interest might be the issue, but
we just got to sell him how dramatic the scene is. So, or buy the rights to Duel of the Fates or something, so it's Star Wars. So.
I knew what that one was.
So basically, Fix is beating the crap out of Slate. So the changeling pounded on Slate's back, screaming at him until one of the blows landed on the back of his neck. The Winter Knight went limp and lay utterly still. More screaming horses. Let's see. Yeah. Then there's a she knight that seems to still be mounted. And they're trying to drag Meryl, drag her behind the pack for what little protection that they can offer. "This is going to be bad," he said. "We had an edge. Their horses were terrified of us on foot. I don't know how well we'll do. Almost everyone's hurt. How's Harry?" Let's see. Oh, because Billy reverted. So Billy was talking. So. "Damn it," Meryl growled thickly. "Let me go. It isn't all that bad. See to the wizard. If he goes down, none of us are going home."
Pragmatic and true.
Yeah. "Meryl, I thought you were hurt bad." The changeling girl sat up, her face pale, her clothing drenched in blood. "Most of it isn't mine," she said, and I knew she was lying. "How is he?" "His skull isn't broken, maybe a concussion. I don't know." This is Billy because he's our nurse now. So, and they're going to have to run for it. But Meryl says that we can't run because Aurora still has Lily. "Talk later. Here they come," Billy said as he dropped to all fours, taking his wolf form again as we looked up and saw the she-warriors coming toward us. The waters behind them abruptly erupted, the still surface of the river boiling up, and cavalry, all dark blue, sea green, deep purple, rose up from under the waves. The riders were more she-warriors clad in warped-looking armor decorated in stylized snowflakes. There were only a dozen of them to the Summer Warriors' score, but they were mounted and attacking from behind. They cut into the ranks of the Summer Warriors, blades flickering, led by a warrior and male of purest white, bearing a pale and cold-looking blade. The Summer Warriors turned to fight, but they'd been taken off guard and they knew it. The leader of the winter attack cut down one warrior, then another, hands spinning through a series of gestures. Cold power surged around that gesture, and one of the Summer Warriors simply stopped moving, the crackling in the air around him growing louder as crystals of ice seemed simply to erupt from the surface of his body and armor, frozen from the inside out. In seconds, he was nothing but a slowly growing block of ice around a gold and green figure inside, and the pale rider almost negligently nudged the horse into a solid kick. The ice shattered into pieces and fell to the ground in a jumbled pile. It was Maeve, the Winter Lady, her green eyes bright with bloodlust. So that's another thing, since they're twins, right? Like green and gold and stuff like that is usually Summer's deal, but she has green eyes, so Aurora has green eyes. That's fair.
I think it changes.
Yeah, cheaters.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Um, one, let's see. Yeah, so one of the Summer back to the water, his sword raised desperately against the riders confronting him. The water surged again, and pale, lovely arms reached out, wrapping around his throat from behind. So Jenny's got to get one too. Yep. So, and then the warrior's scream was cut off as he was dragged under the surface. So I don't think we got to focus on that, but I think it'd be funny. Like Maeve dismounts and talks to Dresden or something like that. And you just see one guy get ganked by the water, in the background.
Honestly, there should be more scary creatures in the river because that's a lot of what fairies were.
Sure.
Whatever Jenny is, I forgot what the hell she is, or like an Undine or Salka, things like that. They just lived in the water, right. And people would like see a pretty face, and then all of a sudden they're drowning, and so they just like get to the river is one point. But if Mab just conveniently or not conveniently says, "Don't get into the river because you might get eaten."
In hindsight, Dresden says at least twice to get to the river, get in the river, and he should fucking know better because certainly Summer's also got creepy things that live in the water, right?
Perhaps things like sirens or mer people. Like I think that the river is basically water women fighting each other the whole time.
Right. Probably why Aurora and his and her crew jumped the river rather than wading through it, So this is just Dresden being, I'll say inexperienced as much as being an idiot in this case, because he should know better, but
he just didn't
he's never
think
seen
of the question to realize he had the answer.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Your godmother sends her greetings, Maeve called to me. I'd have acted sooner, but would have been a fair fight, and I avoid them. I need to get to the table, I called to her. So I've been told. She rode her horse over to Lloyd Slate's unmoving form, and her lovely young face opened into another brilliant smile. My riders are attacking further down the river, drawing Summer's forces that way. You should be able to run upstream. She leaned down and purred, Hello, Lloyd. We should have a talk. This time it's Meryl driving everybody to move because she's well motivated to do something. So Dresden retrieves his effects and, says, all right, people, let's go. So they start along the stream at a jog. They didn't know how far they had to go. Everything around them was chaos and confusion. Once a cloud of pixies flew past us, and I found another stretch over the river where spiders as big as footballs had spun webs, trapping dozens of pixies in their strands. A group of fairy hounds, green and gray and savage, went past hot on the heels of a long panther-like being headed for the water. That's probably Summer, but it'd be funny if that was Cat Sith. So, but, but since the hounds are ignoring Dresden, those are probably Leah's hounds, is kind of what I'm thinking. So,
yeah.
Arrows whistled past, and everywhere lay the fairy dead and dying. Finally, I felt the ground begin to rise, and I looked up the hill to see the stone table before us. I could even see Coric's hulking form at the top as the centaur backed away from the stone figure of Lily, evidently just set upon the table. Aurora dismounted, was a slender, gleaming form looking down upon us with anger. Lily! Meryl called through her, though her voice had gone thready. Fix whirled to look at her, his eyes alarmed, and Meryl dropped to one knee, her ugly, honest face twisting in pain. Get her, Fix. Save her and get her home. She looked around, focusing on me. You'll help him? You paid for it. Stay here, stay down. You've done enough. She shook her head and said, one thing more. But she settled down on the ground, hand pressed to her wounded side, panting. Aurora said something sharp to Coric. The centaur bowed his head to her, and, spear gripped in his hand, came down the hill toward us. Crap, I said. Billy, this guy's a heavy hitter. Don't close with him. See if you can keep him distracted. Billy barked in acknowledgement. Woof. And the werewolves shot forward as the centaur descended, fanning out around him and harrying his flanks and rear, while their companions dodged his hooves and spear. Stay with Meryl, I told Fix, and scooted around the werewolves' flanks, heading up the hill scooted around the werewolf's flanks, heading up the hill toward the stone table. Yeah, so Aurora is starting to use the unraveling. She's starting to pull it apart. I felt something as she did, a kind of dark gravity that jerked at my wizard senses with sharp, raking fingers. The unraveling began to come apart, strand by strand and line by line, under Aurora's slender hands. Dresden's going to use Ventus Servitus, and he stole the unraveling and yells, "Meep, meep," and ran like hell. So... "Damn thee, wizard," screamed Aurora, and the sound raked at me with jagged talons. You think this is an Aurora thing, or you think this is a, Nemesis thing? The sonic attacks, but
I think it's all Aurora. Like in my theory, that the powerful things are given free choice and probably manipulated by Nemesis, but not straight up taken over.
Yeah, I think that's an Aurora thing.
Nice. Yeah, so apparently she summons an even bigger blast of wind that flattens Dresden, and she gets the unraveling back. And then she says, "No more interruptions." The ground screamed from it. Writhing up with whipping, ferocious motion came a thick hedge of thorns as long as my hand. It rose into place, a ring around the waist of the hill, so dense that I couldn't see Aurora behind it. So now he's helpless, and he can't see Aurora, and he can't fight against her spell, and Fix starts screaming for Harry. One of the werewolves let loose a high-pitched scream of agony, and then another. My concentration wavered, and I struggled to regain it. Those people were here because of me, so now we got the self-pitying part. Let's see. He could probably be muttering this to himself as he's, straining against the thorns, right? Since we're not doing internal monologue. Okay. So, hooves galloped up, striking the ground near me. I looked up to see the warrior in green armor, the only rider of those original she cavalry to stay mounted, standing over me, horse stamping, spear leveled at my head. "Don't," I said. "Wait!" But the rider ignored me, lifting the spear, its tip gleaming in the silver light, and drove it down toward my unprotected throat. Chapter. So. The spear drove in.
The tale of Dresden.
Right. Yeah, the spear drove into the earth beside my neck, and the rider hissed in an impatient female voice, "Hold still." And then she takes off her helmet, and it's Elaine, because we all know this. So, "Hold still, I'll get that off you." "Elaine," I said. I went through a bunch of heated emotions, and I didn't have time for any of them. I'd say it was glad to see you, but I'm not sure. "That's because you always were a little dense, Harry," she said, her voice tart. Then she smoothed her features.
Always were a little bitch, Harry.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I've been watching a lot of Archer. Like, I'm doing that as a rewatch now, so I definitely have, why are you being a little bitch? And when he's like hitting Talos with the gun, I just imagined it as their slap fights, So. Yeah, so she casts a spell, Semanyana. So, we get some of her magic flavor. There was a surge of gentle power, and the wind pinning me to the ground abruptly vanished. I pushed myself back to my feet. And now he's got to get through the horns. "You can't, Terry. I know this spell. Those thorns aren't just pointy, they're poisonous. If one of them scratches you, you'll be paralyzed in a couple of minutes. 2 or 3 will kill you. And they won't burn either, because, he gets all like, I know fire. Oh, I ground my teeth. I'll just force them aside then? That'll be like holding open a screen door, Harry. They'll just fall back into place when your concentration wavers. Then it won't waver. You can't do it, Harry, Elaine said. If you start pushing through, Aurora will sense it and she'll tear you apart. If you're holding the thorns off of you, you won't be able to defend yourself. Then you'll have to hold them off of me. What? You hold the thorns back, I'll go through. You're going to go up against Aurora alone. And you're going to help me. Elaine bit her lip, looking away from me. He got real trusting real fast, you know?
Yeah.
So, come on, Elaine. You've already betrayed her, and I'm going through those thorns with your help or without it. I don't know. Yeah, you do. If you were going to kill me, you'd have already had your chance. And if Aurora finishes what she's doing, I'm dead anyway. You don't understand. I know I don't. I don't understand why you're helping her. I don't understand how you can stand by and let her do the things she's done. I don't understand how you can stand here and let that girl die. I let that sink in for a second before I added quietly. And I don't understand how you could betray me like that again. For all you know, it will happen a third time. I'll let those thorns close on you halfway through and kill you for her. Maybe so, I said. But I don't want to believe that, Elaine. We loved each other once upon a time. I know you aren't a coward and you aren't a killer. I want to believe that what we had really meant something even now, and I can trust you with my life the way that you can trust me with yours. Now we're going to get sappy. All right. You'll have to run. I'm not as strong as you, and this is brute work. I won't be able to lift it for long. I nodded at her, doubt nagging me as I did. What if she did it again? Elaine hadn't exactly been sterling up in the upfront honesty department.
Yeah.
I watched as she focused, her lovely face going blank, and felt her draw in her power, folding her arms over her chest, palms over either shoulder like an Egyptian sarcophagus. Find that kind of telling because, yeah. Egyptian magic, right?
Yeah, she uses the same Egyptian words that Justin DeMorn did, I guess.
Right.
So her magic is strange, but she didn't, other than the words later in the book, she didn't seem to do weird positioning like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, more internal dialogue and stuff, and then she yells for him to go and hurry. The wind almost blinded me. I had to run crouched down, hoping that none of my exposed skin would brush against any thorns. I felt one sharp tug along my jacket, but it didn't pierce the leather. Elaine didn't let me down. After a few seconds, I burst through the wall and came out in the clear on top of the hill of the stone table. Aurora stood at the table, fingers flying over the unraveling, its threads pressed against the head of the statue of the kneeling girl still upon the table. I circled a bit to one side, staying out of her peripheral vision, and ran toward her. When I was only a few feet away, the unraveling suddenly exploded in a wash of cold white light. The light washed over the statue in a wave, and as it passed, cold white marble warmed into flesh, her stone waves of hair becoming emerald green tresses. Lily opened her eyes and let out a gasp, looking around dazedly. Aurora took Lily by the throat, drove the changeling girl down to the surface of the stone table with her hand, and drew the knife from her belt. It wasn't all that gentlemanly, but I slugged the summer lady in the back with a two-handed swing of my staff. As I did, the stars evidently reached the right position, and we reached midnight, the end of the height of summer, and the glowing runes on the table flared from golden light to cold, cold blue. The blow jarred the knife from Aurora's hand, and it fell to the surface of the table. Lily let out a scream and got out from under Aurora's hand, rolling across the table surface away from her. Aurora turned to me fast as any of the others, she leaning back on the table and planting both feet against my chest. She kicked hard and drove me back, and before I was done rolling, she had called a gout of fire and sent it roaring toward me. I got to my knees and lifted my staff, calling together my will in time to parry the strike, deflecting the flame into the misty sky. So, some cool effects. The red light of it fell on a green fairy steed leaping in the air above the thorns. It didn't make it over the wall, but fall 20 feet short, screaming horribly as it landed on the poison thorns. Its rider didn't go down with it, though. Talos, his face bloodied, leapt off the horse's back, did a neat flip in the air, and came down inside the circle of thorns unscathed. He just Yoshi'd that horse.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I put that together before. So, kill him, Lord Marshal. We know who's saying that. Yeah. So Talos is a better fighter than Dresden. Big surprise. So he faints, and then a basso bellow shook the hilltop and froze even Aurora for a second. The wall of thorns shook and quivered, and something massive bellowed again and tore through it into the open. The troll was huge and green and hideous and strong. It wielded an axe in one hand like a plastic picnic knife and was covered in swelling welts, poisoned wounds, and its own dark green blood. It had a horrible wound in its side, ichor flowing openly from it. It was dragging itself along despite its wounds, but it was dying, and it was Meryl. She'd chosen.
Yeah. Can't help but think what implications that have in terms of, Dresden goes, to limbo and it indicates the afterlife and all that outside. That seems to be outside the Never Never, like a different dimension beyond that. If her having chosen, then what? She's no longer mortal. She's Fae. Does she get to go to an afterlife? Did she give that up to help save her friends, or did she not? Yeah, we don't know, but it's just a thought I had.
Sure. Yeah, so she drags Talos down and then squishes him. And Harry looks back to see Aurora catch Lily by her green hair and drag her back toward the table. He ran to it and beat her to the knife, a curved number of chipped stone, dragging it across the table into me. Fool, I will tear her throat out with my bare hands. No, you won't. And why not? Because I know something you don't. What? What could you possibly know that matters now? The phone number to Pizza Express. I opened the bag and snarled, "Get her, Toot!" There was a shrill piping blast from inside the valise, and Toot Toot sailed up out of it, leaving a trail of crimson sparkles in his wake. The little fairy still wore his makeshift armor, but his weapons had been replaced with what I'd had Billy pick up from Walmart. An orange plastic box knife, its slender blade extended from its handle. Aurora let out another laugh, uglier, and said, "And what can this little thing do?" Toot blew another little blast of his trumpet and shouted, voice shrill, I'm not even going to do it. "In the name of the Pizza Lord, charge!" I totally could, but I'm going to...
Pizza Lord, charge!
Right. So the valise exploded in a cloud of crimson sparkles as a swarm of pixies, all armed with the cold steel blades sheathed in orange plastic, rose up and streaked toward Aurora in a cloud of red sparkles and glinting knives. She met my eyes as the pixies came for her, and I saw the sudden fear, the recognition of what was coming for her. Fucking little piranhas. She lifted a hand, golden power gathering there, but one of the pixies reached her, box knife slashing and ripped across her hand with its blade. She screamed, blood flowing, and the golden light dimmed. "No," she howled. "No, not now." So lots of description. The piranhas. That's all we need to know, right? We'll have little red sparkles envelop her and little shots of fairies like stabbing her in the arm and face and, hand. So I saw her eyes open, burning brightly, even as zipping, darting death opened up more cuts, flaying her pale skin. She hauled herself toward the table. If she died there, bled to death on that table, she would accomplish her goal. She would hurl vast power toward the winter courts and destroy the balance between the fairy courts. I threw myself up onto the table and into her, bearing her back down into the ground. She screamed in frustration and struggled against me, but she didn't have any strength. We rolled down the hill a few times and wound up on the ground, me pinning her down, holding her there. Aurora looked up at me, green eyes faded of color, unfocused. "Wait," she said, her voice weak and somehow very young. She didn't look like a mad fairy sorceress now. And that's when Dresden got infected. She looked like a frightened girl. "Wait, you don't understand. I just wanted it to stop. Wanted the hurting to stop. The only people who never hurt are dead." And then everybody cries. The light died out of her eyes. Her breathing slowed. She whispered, barely audible, I don't understand. I answered, I don't either. A tear slid from her eye and mixed with the blood, and then she died. I'd done it. I'd saved the girl, stopped the thief, proved Mab's innocence, and won her support for the White Council, thereby saving my own ass. Huzzah.
Huzzah. And Titania will never help you even when it's in her best interest.
Right, yeah. The queens found me maybe a quarter of an hour later. I was only dimly aware of them, of radiant light of gold and blue meeting over me. Gold light gathered over the body for a moment and then flowed away, taking the dead flesh with it. I was left cold and tired on the ground. The gold light's departure left only cold blue. A moment later, I felt Mab's fingers touch my head. She murmured, Wizard, I am well pleased with thee. Go away, Mab, I said, my voice tired. Nay, mortal, it is you who must now depart, you and your companions. Let's see.
Yeah,
so this might
think about walking down the stairway from heaven.
Sure. Down's easier though. So this might be telling for your banner conversation earlier though. It is unusual for a mortal to be able to call any of fairy, even the lowest, into service, but it has been done before. Fear not of your little warriors. They were your weapon, and the only one accountable for their actions will be you. Take their steel with you, and it will be enough. So
she's considering
been bestowed, you know.
Yeah, it's not even a banner. I mean, he made a bargain with them, but it is still a bargain that is worth remarking on. It's not quite the same thing as the banner, but she's noticing how he's creating factions of support.
Sure. To clarify here, call is capitalized here. She means it.
She means it.
It's a noun as much as a verb in this case. So, but yeah, so then they got to finish. They got to finish their bargain. So you're going to live up to your side of the bargain. Of course, the wizards will have safe passport. Not that bargain, ours. First, let me make you an offer. We have a traitor among us, Mab purred, and he will be dealt with accordingly, after which there will be an opening for a new knight. She watched me and said, I would have someone worthy of more trust as his successor. Accept that power and all debts between us are canceled. Not just no, hell no. Mab's smile widened. Very well then. I am sure we can find some way to amuse ourselves with this one until time enough has passed to offer again. Yeah. And then Slate realizes how fucked he is and starts blubbering. So.
Yeah, he knew he would be killed. He did not know he would be tortured.
Oh, I'm sure he does. Yeah. Slate looked up blearily, his voice slurred and panicky. No, Dresden, don't let them take me. Take it, please don't let them keep me waiting. He knows.
Oh, he knows now, but like he expected that the fail state.
Well, he thought he was going to win. Yeah. You're going to a casino. Yes, it's a gamble, and everybody going should know that they're going to lose, but you think you're going to win the big one. And he just played the house, and the house won. The house always wins.
His lack of imagination of he thought losing was just death. He did not have enough imagination of how bad it could be, and now he is realizing, and now he is miserable.
That's fair.
No, just kill me, please. Just murder me. A little bit of murder for your boy. I wouldn't want to be at Mab's mercy either.
Yeah.
Even when you have to recover.
Right. Yeah. As we discovered. So only twice more then, and you will be free of me. And they left. Lloyd Slate's screams lingered behind them. I sat there too tired to move until the lights began to dim. I vaguely remember feeling Ebenezer heft me off the ground and get my arm across his shoulders. The gatekeeper murmured something, and Billy answered him. I woke back up at my place in bed. So I didn't remember that.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, the senior council came and picked him up. So
Well, the two that we're friendly with. But...
Well, yeah. So which one's mom and which one's dad? Because they're picking them up from school, and just
Ebenezer dad.
It's okay. He can have two dads. It's fine. So, yeah, I woke up back at my place in bed. Billy, who had been dozing in a chair next to the bed, woke up with a snort and said, "Hey there, you thirsty?" Let's see. So this is the cleanup, obviously, for all of 5 pages. Ebenezer said to tell you that you'd made a lot of people see red, but that you shouldn't worry about them for a while. The alphas? Banged up. 155 stitches altogether, but we all came out of it more or less in one piece. Pizza party and gaming at my place tonight. My stomach growled at the word pizza. He's got a shower again, obviously. You cleaned up, did laundry? Not me. There was a knock at the door, and he said, "Just a minute." Came back in, visitors. Who is it? The new summer lady and knight. They looking for trouble? Just can't come to talk. So Dresden's all glowery because he thinks that they're here for trouble because he kind of just bumped off their predecessor. So, and we get more description of his apartment. So that'd be nice, but we're just going to skip that for now. Oh, he's cataloging everything because of how nice his place looks and because his icebox is filled. Mm-hmm. I died, and somebody made a clerical error, and this is heaven.
Heaven is a clean apartment.
Yeah, for Dresden.
Sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, he spent the last year or so disheveled looking for a cure, right? So got to keep that in mind too. So Billy hooked a thumb at the door. Visiting dignitaries? So Fix stood there in a set of mechanic's overalls. His frizzy white hair floated around his head and complemented his smile. He had grease on his hands and face, and his old toolbox sat on the ground next to him. Beside him stood Lily, shapely figure, showing off simple dark slacks and a green blouse. Her hair had been pulled back into a ponytail, and it had turned snow white. You, the new summer lady? I know, I didn't want it, but when Aurora died, her power flowed into the nearest summer vessel. Usually it would be one of the other queens, but I had the knight's power, and it just sort of plopped in there. Which still always confuses me. So, because we've talked about how Word of Jim, a full
Molly.
cup, and all that stuff. So, but yeah. Maybe it's because the knight mantle can coexist with the queen's, but the queen mantles cannot. So cannot coexist with each other.
Well, then it wouldn't have flowed back to any of the queens because it, what we see with when Lily dies, it goes instantly to the next vessel because it's a position that must be filled.
The queen's power, right? But she was also the knight.
Yeah, but when Lily dies, it does not go back to Titania. It goes straight to Sarissa.
Right. Okay. But she is currently the knight, and then the queen's mantle flows into her, and then
superseding the knight's mantle, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because the queens can hold the knight's mantle, right? But the knight can't have the queen's mantle. But they can bestow it to someone, I think, right? They can have
Same
it
time.
Here.
We don't actually see the absence of a knight other than in this book because it was turned to stone. Because Mab still always technically has a knight. It's just Lloyd Slade that is being tortured and therefore not acting. But he still has the mantle until Dresden takes it. And so I wonder also if that is something that needs to always be filled as a position. And so as Lily becomes the summer lady, the knight's mantle just instantaneously goes to Fix. Even if she thinks that she chose to have Fix as her knight, maybe she didn't. And he was just close by and her friend, and it was just enough of a target.
It's summer. It could be some hippie bullshit about like it was in her heart and soul that Fix was her protector and, you know, went to it. Because Mab also says it's the last time I let Maeve choose the help. So there is some element of choice there, presumably.
Yes.
So like, unless, you know, they're like, you know, well, we took the old Winter Knight and we locked him in the same room with the new Winter Knight. And then we just let like nature take its course. It's winter. That could totally be how it works for them, right? You know, that the queens don't like absorb and redistribute the power, that it does just flow. But I always kind of got the impression that they were bestowing the mantle, at least the night one.
Yeah. And
but I guess that can't be the case because Lloyd's got to be kept alive until Dresden is ready, right? So it's not like she can just hold on to it.
I mean, and does he have to be kept alive? Or like, is it
well,
that
she just really
torturing?
wanted Dresden. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so, like, but if she did kill Lloyd Slate, then she would cause a literal imbalance of not having an active knight. Or I don't know, like, could she have or could she not have? We saw her behave in a certain way, so we can read it in whichever fashion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other part of it is that, I mean, first of all, Mab is not fussed at all to have to wait. She's going to enjoy some torture. And, you know, maybe the reason why she doesn't do it is that she knows that if she kills Slate and it goes to another knight, she still wants Dresden. She's never going to give that one up until he says yes. But is it more likely, like Mab's calculating, is it more likely that Dresden's going to commit murder to take the mantle, or that he's going to commit an act of mercy and take the mantle?
Yeah.
You know, so it's still, I mean, it's still murder, right? But at that point, he's more putting Slate out of his own misery, you know?
Yeah. He already doesn't count Lloyd Slate as being alive, sort of, at that point. Versus if there was somebody else that was healthy and running around, and perhaps he had to have some form of partnership to work with on any of Mab's other requests, much less likely to do so. And then she threatened that it would be Thomas. So,
right.
Doesn't he like specifically think to himself something along those lines where it's like, I could say it's some mercy and stuff, but really, I just like wanted the power or needed the power or some such.
Yeah, but the price for him to have done it to kill Lloyd Slate is different. He recognizes it, and he can try to dress up as mercy and all that, but he'd kill anybody to protect his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, reading ahead while you guys are discussing. So, Elaine gives him relationship advice about, you know, stop trying to be self-destructive, because if she saw you like this, it would tear her apart. You know, mm-hmm. Like if she saw you,
tearing me apart, Tristan.
Yeah, and then they go to, you know, the Alpha's place, Billy and George's place. So.
Yeah, and he wants booze and not to have to think too hard.
Right. Yeah, I was going backwards a little bit, but yeah. Billy and the rest of you guys, I just wanted to say that you really handled yourself up there. I got a lot better than I expected or hoped. I should have given you more credit. Thank you. It was worth it, right? There was a murmur of agreement from the room. I nodded. Okay, then somebody get me a pizza and a Coke and some dice. But I want it understood that I'm going to need thews. What? Thews. I want big, bulging thews, and I don't want to have to think too much. His face split in a grin. Georgia, do we have that barbarian character sheet left? She went to a filing cabinet? What year does this happen in? Who's got a filing cabinet in their house? Just kidding. Yeah, so you know what disappoints me? Billy asked after a while. No, what? All of those fairies and duels and mad queens and so on, and no one quoted old Billy Shakespeare, not even once. I stared at Billy for a moment and started to laugh. Lord, what fools these mortals be. We did it. Jazz hands.
We finished it.
How many times did we think we were going to finish it and do the finale? This is like the fourth time in a row?
At least 3. So, summer night. How bad could it be? So
it's not. It's great. It's a great book.
No, I mean, yeah, bad as in hard in this case, not as in bad as in bad. But there's just so much, like, yeah, there's a ton in Grave Peril, but there's also so much in this one as well. So yeah. Next we do your favorite book. We're gonna have to have like a whole episode about that scene, plot relevance and everything. So
yep.
I guess Andreas, this is you, man. Your other job.
This is me. You can catch us live every Saturday at 1 p.m. EST. This would be on YouTube. Leave us a comment, leave us a like, subscribe. That means a lot to us. You can support the podcast on patreon.com/brokenjars. You get access to our Discord if you do, where we have gift wars, where you can tell us how wrong or right we are. In my case, right. In E.G., who's not here, case wrong. I think that's it. I hope you tune in next week.